Hey everybody, it's Justin again with the Whole Life Solution. Today we're going to be talking about emotional health and well-being and what it is exactly and how you can go about making sure that you're emotionally healthy yourself and getting your emotional needs met. So first of all, if you've seen some of my videos, specifically the ones on narcissistic abuse, you'll know that I'm someone who struggled with what's called complex PTSD. So my need to, find out what emotional health and well-being was, as well as to heal emotionally and to heal my CPTSD, was really crucial for me to be able to feel better and really to function much more optimally in my life. So I had to, really raise my emotional intelligence, as they say, just to heal myself. This isn't anything magical. I'm not like a gifted person or anything. I just made the decision to focus on my emotional health and well-being, and now I'm in a position where I just know the ins and outs of it because I know what I had to go through to heal from my complex PTSD, which isn't like 100% healed, but it is to a large extent. I'd honestly say probably like 80-85% healed. The issues that I used to have are mostly completely gone, and any issues I still have with things like emotional flashbacks or my own inner critic kicking in, or my own irrational negative thought processes, I know how to kind of recognize those and reverse them. So we're going to talk a little bit about emotional health and well-being today, from just general emotional health and well-being, and this also applies if you have something more intense like PTSD or complex PTSD. So at the core, emotional health and well-being is, it was always a strange thing for me because, of course, it's kind of like invisible, right? And I think a lot of men in general have trouble with this, and it could be that this is one reason why women are always calling men stupid, because men's emotional awareness of their own selves isn't that hot. But, we weren't really raised that way. I mean, a lot of us weren't conditioned with that. We're just doing the best we can. And those of us who have raised our emotional intelligence have done so sort of consciously for one reason or another, because they just wanted to heal or feel better, kind of like what I did. And so I was one of these people, actually. I wasn't just a male with, that was kind of disconnected from my emotional self. I was someone with CPTSD, so I was completely emotionally just jammed up, as I like to call it. I was emotionally, not only emotionally unavailable. I mean, it was like my whole emotional self was just completely shut down, completely suppressed and dissociated, to the point where I didn't even know what I was really feeling from one minute to the next. I mean, I didn't even know. I had no idea. I was just completely lost internally, and it was a result of, reading different books on emotional health and wellness, as well as going to various workshops and therapists and, learning and 12-step programs and stuff, and being open with people and learning like what works, what makes me feel better, what what allows me to come out of my, not only my shell, but really like a, inner prison of emotional pain and damage, and just totally like, it's kind of like a bomb went off inside me. You'll hear me say that a lot. It's just like pieces of the building are everywhere inside me. There's just stuff all over the place. I mean, the papers and desks, and it was so messed up that it took a while to sort through everything and get everything back to a place of being able to function, right? So, what I found, to make a long story short, at the core of emotional health and well-being is really it all boils down to your capacity for self-love and self-compassion on one side of the coin, and on the other side of the coin, your capacity for what's called free self-expression, right? So, free self-expression includes things like effective communication, assertiveness, and really, speaking and being vulnerable, but from a genuine place, right? Because when I say genuine, I was someone who, I wasn't hiding who I was, like, to be like shady or anything. I was just kind of like, growing up in a home where there's a lot of abuse, and you're not really allowed to be yourself, and you're always shamed and put down. I kind of just evolved to have like a mask of people pleasing, and I was trying to, instead of like just knowing how to be myself, which is what people say, I had to try to figure out like who people wanted me to be, so I wouldn't be hurt or abused or attacked or anything. I mean, that was what was going on in my little kid mind. So it's kind of like hiding emotionally, as weird as it sounds. Like you can hide physically, obviously, but on the inside of myself, it was like I was hiding emotionally inside my own self. I don't know how else to put it. I imagine that's kind of like what dissociation really is. And it wasn't fun. So I didn't know how to, like, I could talk to people, but it was always like, it wasn't real, but on the other hand, I didn't really know how to be genuine. Like I just never, those were skills I just never learned. It was almost like I was disassociated from the very beginning of my life, so I had to relearn like what my heart, like, it's kind of like my emotions, my emotional self and my mind were like disconnected. That's what it felt like. And once I like found out, like once I dug around inside myself through writing and speaking and trying to be vulnerable, I learned like what I was actually feeling in any given particular moment, right? Then I could voice that genuine feeling. Like I could voice my genuine thoughts and feelings, and my communication skills got better. So, what's interesting is it's kind of like being seen and heard, right? The desire to be seen and heard. When you're authentic and genuine, you're coming from from a place of being seen and heard, right? And a real. You're not hiding. You're not putting on any masks. Whether it's with a friend or a loved one or in a therapist group or a workshop or something, the ability to do this will get rid of any kind of internal shame you have. And that's what was going on with me. A lot of us who hide and who are kind of always feeling anxious or the need to hide. I mean, we needed to hide, really, growing up in an abusive environment, But those defense mechanisms that were necessary in the beginning kind of can serve to impede your progress in life as you get older. And really the desire to hide, the fear of being seen and heard is at the core, it's all shame-based, which is you're just afraid of being seen and heard for who you really are. So when you can regain your ability for free self-expression, which again is assertiveness, effective communication, speaking, it really allows you to open up, and it allows any shame that's in there to kind of like vanish, right? And that will help you significantly when you're opened up, like in your heart, and being genuine and authentic. That's your key place of where you want to be for emotional health and well-being, to be open, right? In your emotional center, your heart center, you want to be open. You don't want to be emotionally, we'll get into things like emotional reactivity and emotional attachment later on, but being emotionally open and free and healthy is one crucial point of where, how to be emotionally healthy. Other forms of free self-expression includes things like singing, dancing, or just expressing your genuine self in front of other people, where you can be seen and heard in a real way, sort of a vulnerable way. So it doesn't have to be speaking, singing, or dancing, but those are, if you think about free self-expression and being vulnerable and expressing yourself through different ways in front of others in some way, shape, or form, those are generally the ways that human beings are able to be, expressive in a free way. So what's interesting is once I realized that learning how to be assertive and have effective communication, to speak from my core, learning singing and dancing, which I haven't even gotten to that part of my life yet. I'd like to be a better dancer and stuff, but if you notice, if you're someone who's shut down emotionally or has a lot of internal shame, usually people like us don't want to be seen or heard. We don't want to be seen like singing or dancing because it's a form of being vulnerable in front of other people, and we don't want to feel that shame, right, that might arise. But on a deeper level, for those of us who have endured abuse and trauma, for being open we're terrified of being attacked again, because the last time we were vulnerable and open and we were freely self-expressive, we really were attacked and shut down and abused, mentally, verbally. As a child, you come in, you're the just, you can just see it. Children have their ability to be freely self-expressive from the very beginning. So if someone develops, if someone is shut down emotionally, usually it's because they've been abused, honestly, or they've been exposed to some kind of trauma where they were just shut down, because that's not natural. I mean, if you just allow a child to be a child and be freely self-expressive and to speak from their hearts, they know how to do that. It's their, when someone has dissociated, that's a sign of trauma in some shape or form, and hiding so they don't get attacked. So you got to keep that in mind with people who have CPTSD or who have been through a lot of trauma. It's not just being shy again. It's literally they've been conditioned that they were literally attacked and abused the last time in their life when they really were open. So it's, you got to be patient with those people if you're working with them, and as a therapist, or even like if somebody's in a 12-step program, you got to have real patience, because they're not just being brave by opening up, by experiencing any shame, the uncomfortable feelings of shame of being seen and heard, but they're also facing the possibility, because they don't really know if someone around them is going to attack them or not, for being who they are. You know what I mean? And I know that sounds pretty intense and terrible, and it is, but a lot of us have grown up like that. A lot of us have had relationships like that where we're not allowed to be ourselves. We're not allowed to be freely self-expressive. So definitely that in and of itself. I mean, I remember just being in personal development workshops, or even just 12-step groups. I love 12-step groups, by the way, any of them. Because you can experience speaking freely and being real with absolutely no judgment. Nobody's talking over you. Nobody's interrupting you. Nobody's trying to change or fix you or judge you. And that in and of itself, for me, just that alone was so healing. It was so freeing for me just to be able to speak about how I genuinely felt, what my genuine feelings were, and to have people listen to me and not shut me down or ridicule me or criticize me in any way. So that's number one. Number two, obviously, is self-love and self-compassion, which, obviously these two go hand in hand, free self-expression and self-love, because when you're working on yourself and your ability to be freely self-expressive, that's a form of self-love, because you're taking care of yourself and you're making sure that your inner needs are being met. But self-love really includes every area of our being, right? So we are talking about emotional health and well-being, but believe it or not, all aspects of our being are sort of interconnected. So, for example, one form of taking care of yourself emotionally is actually just making sure you're eating right and getting some exercise. Yes, that's good for your physical health, but believe it or not, taking care of yourself even just physically is a form of emotional health and well-being. You're making sure that you are getting what you need, that your mind, your heart, your body are getting the nutrients that they need, and are getting some exercise. Conversely, is people who habitually eat a lot of garbage and junk food on a regular basis, and don't drink enough water, don't get enough exercise. This is a form of not loving themselves, right? Emotionally, there's something going on inside them where they're kind of destroying themselves, probably without even being consciously aware of it. So, if you're having issues with self-love, even just working on, your diet a little bit more. You don't have to go bananas, but just trying to include a little, drinking a little more water throughout the day. Maybe having a nice big bowl of veggies or a big salad or something at least once a day, or just making sure you're at least getting some healthy food every day. Maybe just going for a walk a few times a week. That is a form of emotional health and well-being, or rather self-love, and making sure that your emotional health and well-being is being taken care of. Obviously, you want to make sure you're taking care of yourself as far as what your needs are, and making sure those are getting met. And a big one is emotional healing, right? So learning how to heal yourself emotionally, like as far as We talked earlier about your heart being open, so with free self-expression. Well, when we've dealt with a lot of emotional pain, there's a lot of stuff that's sort of suppressed and kind of shoved down inside of us that we have to kind of allow to come up to the surface or to dig it out so we can process through that energy and then let it go so that we can be open emotionally. Because when you're holding on to a lot of pain, your heart is shut down because of it. So a great way to start doing this is just start writing your emotions down. Like, for example, if you might have a, like a memory or something pop up in your head regularly throughout the day of something that happened in your life, either recently or in the distant past, that really bothers you, that you have like an emotional trigger on. Honestly, if you just went home and spent a little time just writing that memory out with a pen and paper, and then writing down, your honest, genuine thoughts and feelings on the matter, and really letting it rip, like just getting raw and real and allowing yourself to, say, like cuss and, kind of yell on paper. It's a form of what's called verbal ventilation, where you're allowing yourself to grieve. And that allows you to really kind of clean out your emotional pain, right? And to heal it. Because you're seeing it, when you're bringing the suppressed stuff up to the surface, which is what happens when you're writing down things that have emotional charge, you're bringing suppressed emotional gunk to the surface of your conscious mind where it can be seen, and then you can process through it consciously with the process of writing. You can also do this by talking to people, but honestly, it's even better to do the writing, because there's certain grooves in the brain, physical grooves that are connected to different experiences you've had, especially pain. And so when you're writing things out, it allows those grooves to be kind of like physically altered and healed, and it allows your brain to heal, as well as your emotional self. So writing is really the best way to do that. Writing out memories of it, or even if something happens in your day-to-day life that really bothers you, just allow yourself to write out like how you felt about it. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to sit there for a certain period of time. Just let yourself be honest and raw with your real thoughts and feelings, because otherwise what's going to happen is you're going to end up just pushing it back into your mind and suppressing it, and all that stuff's going to build up. Just think of like garbage, right? Like we all know we throw garbage in the trash can, but eventually we've got to take it out, to the street so the garbage people can come pick it up, and so we can get the garbage out of our house. Otherwise, we all know what's going to happen. It's just going to build up and overflow, and then there's going to be garbage everywhere, So that's kind of what happens emotionally with our emotional gunk and garbage and pain and trauma and anger and sadness and all that stuff that's suppressed down. It will, like, if you don't process through it through writing or at least talking about it with someone, it will stay in you, right? Like, so people talk about moving on in life from certain things that have bothered them, but really moving on is, processing through what actually happened, because just suppressing stuff and ignoring stuff and denying stuff is not actually moving on, right? You're just suppressing it. So writing your memories out, writing your thoughts and feelings on things that bother you are a powerful form of emotional healing. And, other forms of self-love are sort of like your inner thoughts, the way you speak to yourself internally. Instead of speaking to yourself like some kind of tyrant or some kind of mean, nasty dictator, like maybe your parents did when you were little, start noticing that, the voice that says, oh, you're dumb, or you don't have what it takes, or you can't make it, or you're ugly or fat or stupid, or, that voice that's always putting you down. A lot of that has been given to you from your abusive parents if you had them. So start to, notice those thoughts and then reverse them and be a little more loving with yourself. Like, adopt instead of having like an inner critic or an inner tyrant, have like an inner like mother figure, or somebody who's loving and soothing and understanding, right? This will allow you to really calm down on the inside and feel that kind of sense of well-being and peace and joy and love, because what's actually happening is you're loving yourself, right? A lot of people don't realize this, but a lot of the anxiety that we feel on a regular basis, a lot of the worry and concern and fear, it's really, we're kind of like attacking ourselves with our own thoughts on the inside, and we don't even realize it, right? Like we're going to, especially if you've been involved with narcissistic abuse or some kind of abuser in your life, they've actually conditioned your brain to continually abuse yourself when they're not around. And this kind of, so you see what I mean? Like you if you grew up in an abusive home and you move on physically with jobs and a different house and you move away, but you don't process through your feelings, you haven't actually moved on, right? And those patterns will still keep coming up, and you'll still be feeling kind of like terrified or afraid or have trouble with anxiety or other issues because you never stopped attacking yourself on the inside and started to love yourself. So speaking to yourself a little bit more loving, doing things that you enjoy, allowing you to really vent and grieve, anything that's bothering you, even if it's just something little, like someone cut you off in traffic, on paper. I love paper because it's free. Well, obviously you have to buy the notebook, but let's say it's extremely cheap. You don't have to pay for a lot of therapy, and it's extremely therapeutic. Whether you're in therapy or not, I'd highly recommend doing your own self-work with writing out your thoughts and feelings and any traumatic memories that you might have, because it'll allow you to process through it. It'll allow your brain to process it, and then it'll be set free rather than suppressing it. So self-love is also things like, making sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who love you and respect you. If you'll notice, there's a lot of people who don't like to do that. You hear about a lot of females who like the so-called bad boys. Well, a lot of that is those particular females don't love themselves enough to not tolerate that kind of stuff. Like, they are attracted to people who treat them like garbage, and guys can do it too. Guys can have low self-esteem, low self-worth, low self-confidence, and can get into relationships with women who also are abusive and treat them poorly as well. So, but friends can do it. People at work. I got to the point where I was like, there's no need for any disrespect for me, right? It's just there's just no need. Like if someone's not going to be respectful of me as a person and my my feelings and my thoughts, then I'm just not going to be around them, right? I don't care if it's a girlfriend or a friend or someone at work. Like I'm just not gonna. Life is too short, to tolerate that stuff. So that's a form of self-love as well. So. I hope that gave you some examples of self-love. You can learn more about all this stuff will be covered in the Whole Life Solution course. A link will be included in the description below. And, we go way deeper and give you all the tools to heal emotionally and to get all your needs met: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, financial, all that stuff. And to make sure that you're genuinely healthy and happy in a real and genuine way. That's what the Whole Life Solution is all about. But, on your own, you can start practicing self-love, start reading books about self-love and self-compassion. Learn. You can even practice on your own, either in front of a mirror or just, sitting down, talking to, just talking. Like, you could either pretend like someone's there if you're too nervous or shy, or just talk, right? And try to, ask yourself questions like, how do I really feel right now? And just verbalize it, right? Even though it might seem silly because no one else is there and you're speaking, by verbalizing, it's really allowing you to open up. And you'll be able to clear a lot of shame and fear and anxiety on your own, just by being able to speak from your heart and core on different issues, right? How do you feel genuinely? Like, what things do you genuinely like? Is there anything that's bothering you? Is there something that's happened that made you feel like you weren't seen or heard? What are your particular genuine opinions on things that you might be afraid sharing in public? Things like that. And that'll help you to free up a lot of the shame that's inside you if you're dealing with any of that. And it'll also give you the practice to be able to do it with people when that time comes. So I really like to do that too, practicing assertiveness and effective communication on my own. Kind of like practice and training and conditioning, as if I was, practicing some kung fu. So when the time comes when I have to defend myself, I can use my kung fu that I practice on a regular basis, and it's not a big deal. Similarly, when the time comes for me to have to practice being open and assertive and practice effective communication with others, it's much easier to do. Like, the anxiety is gone because when you recondition yourself to do it on a regular basis, it becomes a lot easier. And then when you start doing all these things, you'll notice that you'll start to just feel better and better and better and better. And the more you feel better, the more you'll be attracted to taking care of yourself and giving yourself self-love, and you'll know how to do it. So go ahead and try, you could write down different ways of how you think you could be more loving to yourself, practicing self-love, self-compassion, and how to be more to have more free self-expression. You don't have to go sing and dance in front of a live studio audience or anything, but just learning how to speak from your core, even if you're just practicing by yourself again, is very powerful. So that's when you've got those two things going on, self-love and your ability for healthy, free self-expression, you'll notice your heart centers open up and you feel good. You feel filled up inside. You feel kind of a certain degree of peace and joy and calm on the inside. That's the indication of when your emotional needs are being met. Because really, your emotional needs are to be loved and seen and heard, right? And to feel safe. So when you're getting all those needs met on your own, you will be emotionally healthy. That's what emotional health is. So I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to comment in the comments below. And I'll see you guys next week. Take care.